So many historians are going to argue that there are two phases of the war for America in World War II in Europe and in the Pacific. I would argue that there's three phases: Europe, Pacific, and the home front. See, the world's biggest war that's ever happened in history takes a lot of resources. So as we get into World War II, America's got to retool its entire economy just to support the whole war. So remember, uh, the Roaring Twenties led to the stock market crash of 1929, which led to the Great Depression in the 1930s, where unemployment was at an all-time high of almost 25%. See, the New Deal starts making that go down, but it spikes a little bit toward here. Now, what really makes it dip permanently is World War II. This war is going to demand so much stuff that America has to put people to work in factories to make it. So this is the first time in US history where United States government and industry forged a close working relationship to allocate resources effectively. If a company was making cars, they started making Jeeps and airplane parts. If companies were making food, they started making MREs to send to the troops. People who are making other items might start making bullets because the American military needed it. The US government was one of the biggest purchasers of industrial goods during this time frame. So a lot of people had to be put to work for this. Now, America also had to raise a lot of money because while the government wanted to buy all this stuff, they had to keep up the money supply to buy it all. So they encouraged citizens to do a lot of things. One example of things is rationing. And rationing is when you only use what you need to maintain a supply of essential products to the war effort. Do you need that second bag of sugar, or can you afford to have it sent overseas? Now, rationing was kind of forced upon a lot of people because the government started issuing war ration books where you got a coupon and you took your coupon book to the store and you had a coupon allowing you to buy, let's say, one bag of sugar. So you take your coupon, you buy your one bag of sugar, but you can't buy another one because you already used up your coupon. Also, you didn't want to be like this one lady grabbing all 6 cans of food off the shelves like people buy toilet paper nowadays. You wanted to buy just enough for yourself so everyone could have a little bit and any extra could go to the boys fighting overseas. Do with less so they'll have enough. People also started putting gardens in their backyards so they could plant fruits and vegetables to use for themselves or send overseas. Everyone was pitching in, and if you didn't do your part, you were considered unpatriotic. Now, another way to raise money was war bonds and income tax. So if you like losing a little bit of money to tax out of your paycheck every week, blame World War II. This is where income tax comes in. Now, I don't know if any of you have bonds, but it looks like these. I had a few of these when I was younger. Basically, what a war bond was an IOU that the government issued you. Now, you gave the government, let's say, $50. They gave you this nice piece of paper. So, in a few years after the war, the government promised to pay you back your $50 plus a little bit extra as long as you still had this piece of paper. It was a micro loan that you gave to the government. And people would go all over the country trying to sell these to you. America's going to raise over $20 million selling war bonds, and $20 million in 1940s money was a lot. People retooled from peacetime production, to wartime production. I mentioned it before. Car manufacturing turned to tank manufacturing and other parts for other items. Now, what do people do? Women and minorities are going to enter the labor force. We see a large movement of women to work in factories. Also, Minorities, African Americans, Hispanic people are going to be open to jobs they hadn't had before. So many men were leaving factories that jobs were being left unfilled and people started going to work. Citizens are going to volunteer and support the war effort. Send stuff to the soldiers to keep them happy. And also, we need to keep the supply of manpower up. It's not just about money and food, it's also about manpower. So, this is where the draft comes in. Now, gentlemen, when you turn 18, you're going to have to sign up for the selective service. Now, that means you could get drafted if a draft ever became necessary. So, this was all just an effort to make sure America had enough to keep going in the war effort. Now, I mentioned women were beginning to work in factories more. They had to leave out of the house and go do stuff to make sure the soldiers were being taken care of. A propaganda poster that we saw floating around, and you probably have seen this before, this is Rosie the Riveter. She convinced women to go work in factories. This lady was a model. She didn't even know she was the model. She didn't find out till much later in life that she was the inspiration for Rosie the Riveter. And it wasn't just white women who were getting in on the act, too. Like I said, lots of African Americans are going to end up working in factories. Many are going to move to major cities. And African Americans are going to use this chance of working for the war effort to parlay that into civil rights. If they can work in factories and support the war, why can't they have things like voting rights, equality in education, lots of other things? So you could argue the civil rights movement starts after World War II.